Ring ring.
Oh, hello,
Hello?
hello.
Hello?
Hey.
Hey, that was
Uh,
supposed to be a school bell, but I guess it
oh,
sounded more like a telephone.
I thought you were saying, "Hey, I'm calling you."
No, like
Hello, where are
that
you?
was the tardy bell, Josh. And
See, there's a calmer, slower
yeah.
bong, bong, bong. Third
Bong.
one.
Yeah,
You're
that's
late.
actually better. You're late.
I do get plenty of calls. This is the Clear School District letting you know that your
Child is absent or tardy.
yeah.
Yeah. The reason I did
Desensitized. Go
that,
ahead.
Josh, was because
Mhm.
our last episode we talked about back to school,
Yeah,
and we're back in it. We're a couple weeks in.
yeah.
Things going well? The Emery's?
Yeah, but for the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
Smooth entry, making some friends, no calls from the teachers or the principals.
Yeah.
Um, I did have a, a fail as a parent. Um,
This is first time ever, listener. First time ever.
we're
The
gonna
great Josh
model.
Emery had a
Today, we're actually
parent
talking
fail.
about humility and forgiveness, so this is appropriate. It was Sunday, and school had started on Wednesday, and it was, as every parent can attest to, a lot of prep and new stuff. And I had failed to carve out enough downtime for myself. And by Sunday, for no good reason, I was really irritable. And I was snapping at the kids at a level I rarely do. And some of the snapping actually you'd say yelling at the kids,
Mm.
to the point where I hurt their feelings. And daughter said, "What's your problem?" but used a little more color
Yeah.
than that. And I just said, "Oh my gosh, it's not your guys' fault. You're not doing
Not your
anything
fault.
wrong. I'm irritable and I'm sorry." And then I texted again the next day, um, as they went to school. I just wanted to say, "I'm sorry for yesterday. I was irritable. It wasn't your fault." And, my daughter, awesome. She's like, "No worries. I, I was like, I have plenty of my own days. Love you." It's just
No, that's
like
nice.
nice that we're not held accountable or for unfair or for too long after we make a mistake. But I
Mhm.
didn't carve out enough space to just recover. And going to the pool, which is just like casual and fun, and my son forgot his swimsuit, even after I said grab this and this, and he didn't, and I got mad. I shouldn't get mad because it's just not, there's no reason.
Right.
But when we're low on energy or depleted, our ability to like handle the next thing is compromised, and I just overreacted. So, in hindsight, I would say I would have carved out some time Saturday or Sunday morning to like really unwind and take care of me, so I have more patience and presence with my kids.
Yeah. That actually brings me to Dan's personal philosophies segment of the show,
Ooh,
which
we have a
is
new segment.
take care of old numero
Oh, there it
uno.
is.
You know?
There it is. Old segment.
The whole segment.
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta take care of old numero uno,
Yeah.
Josh. That's
If
what
you
I
love
said.
others, you take care of yourself first. Yeah.
Well, I love it. Well, I
Oh,
would say after the first week for our house, and we talked about it last episode. So, pretty good parents out there, go listen to last episode about back to school tips.
yeah.
But definitely notice the kids were just so tired and exhausted. And I was wondering why does the school district start on a Thursday? Well, it's Wednesday for the sixth
Yeah.
graders, freshmen, etc.
Yeah.
That transition day. Then it was Thursday, Friday. And I'm like, it makes sense because they are
Can only handle
gassed.
like 2 or 3 days.
Just yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Start with
slowly
one
ramping
day.
up, getting to normalcy around here. But yeah, it's good. So yeah,
Yeah.
if you need some tips, go listen to that last episode. And then today, Joshua, what do we got queued up for us today?
Today we're talking about what's it look like, and why do we model and teach humility and forgiveness? Um, these words, it's always interesting to me that we can talk about these concepts, and then when I really get down to it with folks, their lack of education or understanding of how to do some of these things. Like, for example, forgiveness gets talked about a lot at a like 10,000-foot level.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Not a lot of people know actually how to like forgive or feel confident in their forgiveness. And so I would like to teach on that today.
Yeah.
Um, they're both humility and forgiveness are both very similar in that they're kind of an attitude and a disposition and an energy thing. Humility is more of a character trait that's absorbed and developed over time. Forgiveness is more of a skill set and a decision. They both have a feeling attached to them, and they both uh, give off an energy. But one is more attitude and practice, and forgiveness is more of a commitment and skill set. So, the importance of these, I mean, it should go without saying, but I guess this is the why. The what is the importance of modeling humility and forgiveness. The why, these are really, really healthy character traits for all of us, including our children. And if they're not being modeled or taught in the home, there's zero guarantee that our children are going to have these. So being mindful of what are we modeling, attitude wise, and extending forgiveness and grace with ourselves, and not to. It's important not to overlook how we treat ourselves is also modeling our belief system and what we want for our children. So if you want your children to be able to forgive themselves, learn their lesson, learn the thing that needs to be learned, but then to be able to move on. How well we do that with ourselves is going to influence that. And
Mhm.
so understanding, we kind of practice what we preach. If we're setting a double standard where we are gracious and forgiving of them, but we don't do that to ourselves, it's likely that they're going to have that same kind of model, even though that's not what we want for them. Ironically, we want them to forgive themselves, but then we don't forgive ourselves. So, uh, like you kind of said, like taking care of numero uno, when we focus on ourselves as being one of these, like being a person who has humility and forgiveness with ourselves and with others, we're more likely to teach that and model that, and they're more likely to absorb it and become that. If we don't, if it's a double standard, it's like do as I say, not as I do.
Mhm.
They end up subconsciously absorbing kind of these weird behaviors like, well, but you say that, but you were really hard on yourself. So I felt like I was supposed to be hard on myself. I hear it from a lot of moms who saw their moms, work really hard and not take any time for themselves, and they felt like that's what was expected to be a mom, or a dad was supposed to work really hard and be tough or something. These
Mhm.
stereotypical roles, and then that's what the kids see day in day out, and then no wonder they become that, or they don't have the skill set for doing that. So I said a little bit ago, but humility is more of an attitude and a character trait, kind of a lifestyle almost. That it certainly can be taught, but it's more of a you catch it than you learn it, and it's something that we are instilling in our children every time we respond to a challenging situation. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I got that wrong. I don't know everything, obviously. I think I do, but obviously I don't. Or I'm really, disappointed in how I handled yesterday. I snapped at you guys. That's not appropriate. Now, I didn't have humility in the moment when I snapped at the kids. I was wrapped up in my own little storm, and I felt justified that their lack of hustle or their poor planning or them forgetting something warranted my explosion, which obviously it doesn't. And so humility was lacking in that moment. And I would like to highlight humility and emotional regulation are compromised. They're harder to access when we're tired and stressed and spread too thin. So no wonder on Sunday, humility felt so far, it felt so distant from me. I felt right. I was wrong. Or I didn't feel wrong. I was hustling all week. They were wrong. And therefore it's okay for me to like dump on them. Obviously that's not appropriate and it wasn't their fault. Humility though allowed me or reminded me or guided me to apologize. And the belief system in that is I don't want my kids to think that that behavior is justified, especially when it was my fault and not theirs. And I want them to know that I'm not too big or too right to admit when I'm wrong. Uh, that is absorbed over time. And so it's important that we're modeling that. And the forgiveness piece actually has to be taught, not for all scenarios. Like someone can say, oh, that's okay. I forgive you. and they don't get hung up on it. But if it's a bigger violation, a bigger insult or hurt, forgiveness actually requires a little more intentionality and heavier lifting. That again, I'd like to go into today. I'd like usually take clients through like 5 steps of forgiveness
Mhm.
to actually make sure they've done it thoroughly. And when they get done, they can feel confident that they've done it well. And now they're upholding it versus wondering if they did it the wrong way or something.
Yeah. So is having the skills of forgiveness sort of help enable someone to have humility?
It forces like the you can't really do forgiveness authentically without being humble.
Right.
So yes, if someone's committed to practicing forgiveness, they're also practicing humility. It doesn't always go in reverse though.
Mhm.
Like you could be humble and still not know how to forgive. It's har- uh, it's kind of hard, but it's possible for someone to like kind of silo off some wound or some hurt towards one person and not forgive, and still be a humble person. Or and sometimes it's an act, like kind of like a fake humility.
Mhm.
You'd say if you really were humble, you'd be letting go of all of this and not holding on to it. It's which is better for us and it's better for those around us.
Yeah.
But the humility piece is a combination of our attitude, our words, and our behavior. And just to be able to say, I know I think I'm right all the time, but I know I'm not. That is such a gift to like those around us, especially if we're very opinionated and we think highly of our opinions. It's just nice to have those kind of statements that kids can hear us say and absorb. Hopefully having the same kind of attitude. Like I want my kids to believe in themselves and feel proud and confident in their ideas and know that there's no way they're always right. And if there's a better idea or a better way of doing something, we should adopt it as quickly as possible. Like it makes no sense to just hold on to our way if there's a better way.
Mhm.
And I always try to say with clients, especially with, coaching clients for business, best idea should always win.
Right.
Like why hold on to something else if there is a better idea, not letting your pride or ego get in the way. Like best idea in a family, if whether that's the youngest person. I remember this there was this conflict one time that we had coming out of a movie theater and it was really kind of riled up between my wife and daughter and I. And it was really, I mean, again, stupid, dumb, like shouldn't have happened, but it did. And it escalated as we got in the truck. And my son, at at the time he was 11, came to me like a few hours later and said, "Dad, I really think as the dad, like you should intervene in those situations
Mm.
and keep that conflict from escalating."
Yeah.
And I was thinking, "Holy shit, you are so right." And these are really wise words from my 11-year-old.
Yeah.
And so best idea should win. And I said, "You're absolutely right. I'm sorry I didn't step up and intervene in that moment. I don't have a great excuse. I was kind of distracted and fired up myself, but you're right. That would have been appropriate. And I can commit to being better in that role moving forward." I felt justified in taking the stance I did in in the car ride home. But best idea should win, and it makes more sense to be a person of reconciliation and peacemaking in a family than I don't know, wounded or upset or justified, not intervening and not
Mhm.
participating. And that requires some humility on my part to recognize, although I felt justified in my stance, that wasn't the best attribute or the best expression. And wanting to be a better person, hearing that from my son took a lot of humility, but hopefully he saw it and felt it. Like that's what it's like to be a humble person is acknowledging when you make a mistake, no matter who brings it to your attention. And hangups for parents is feeling like they're supposed to be right. Like they're supposed to always be teaching and therefore they're supposed to always know. Therefore, if they're wrong, they're failing.
Right.
That backfires significantly when you think, but you're supposed to be teaching humility also. Well, I say supposed to. If you want to be a good parent, you'll be teaching humility, modeling humility. There's no really supposed tos, but if you want to be a good parent, that's what you do. And so teaching that you're not always right, everyone knows that you're not always right. Like that's crazy. Teaching your kids how to be that way starts with how we do it ourselves. But the belief that we're supposed to know it all and have it all figured out and we're not making mistakes significantly gets in the way of our ability to demonstrate or model humility.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a fan of the "because I said so,"
Yeah.
idea, and I heard this on, maybe it was a show or a podcast or something, and they were like, "We need to get back to the times of when, we coddle our kids too much, and a sufficient answer is because I said so." And, maybe there's some certain times it's okay, I'm the adult in the room, I need to make a quick decision, but I just always thought it just fell flat on its face if you just don't have a why,
Yeah.
and kids, I think, pick up on that so quickly, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think just to be humble enough to or have enough humility to say, "Oh, I actually don't have a good why." So maybe not because I said so, maybe what I said doesn't make any sense,
Yeah.
you know?
Why? Yeah. I can appreciate the sentiment in what you just referenced in that message.
Mhm.
We definitely are coddling too much if we're going to generalize.
Right.
We have a lot of like younger adults right now that lack confidence and identity and self-esteem because their parents coddled them too much, did too much for them, and didn't let them develop perseverance and confidence as they go through adversity. So there's definitely there's some truth to that, and I can also appreciate the need to just hear the word no and just be okay with it
Right.
versus an entitlement that says you deserve an answer all the time. So
Mhm.
I absolutely agree with that stance. I would just modify it to say, and giving them a reason why is smart.
Mhm.
If you can't give a good reason why, maybe it's your issue and not theirs, and you need to figure out why you're trying to control it. If you can't really say why you want them to do something. So if you can just kind of take that sentiment but add on, but you should be able to clarify why you're wanting to do it. Well, we said this in a previous podcast, but it's lazy parenting to just say because I said so.
Mhm.
Like, well, you're not teaching anything valuable. Like, if you need a moment, say, I'm sorry, but I need a moment right now for myself. I can explain this later. That's reasonable. What's not reasonable is just say, stop that. Well, why? I'm having a good time. Well, because I said so. That's just dumb. It's not gonna like it communicates this really weird hierarchy. You don't need a reason. You're a kid. I'm an adult. I know better. I need you to just follow through with that. And I do want them to follow through with what we say, but I should also be able to explain why I want it that way because I want them to understand the reasoning behind it. Those are the lessons I want them to learn. So if we can just, in a humble attitude, say, I need this for right now. It might not feel fair to you, but please cooperate with me in this. You're still getting to do what you want them to do, but not in a authoritative kind of way,
Right.
which is unnecessary. If you need to pull that parent card once in a while, fine. Get in the car. I don't want to. I'm sorry. I need you to get in the car. I don't need to tell you why, or just get in the car.
Right.
But most situations, there is time to talk about why and what it would look like for them to be cooperative. And humility just works better for life with people.
Yeah.
You know, what is it like to interact with someone at the grocery store or on the street or at work where they have the humility to say, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Can we talk about how to do that differently next time? Versus a prideful person who's defensive and argumentative. Like those are character traits that are absorbed and modeled in our home, and then it launches them into like a life of being a particular kind of person. So, if you really want to make sure you're instilling these in your children, start with yourself. Make checking your own attitude, your own words, and your own behavior, and seeing where you can be modeling that more.
Yeah. Well, and it's been cool to watch. My boys are now 13 and 11, but they're really picking up on, especially on the sports field, where they see these kids and because I don't think it's demonstrated everywhere, and especially you get, maybe they see it from some pro athletes or some antics and stuff, and kids are just now popping off, and a couple times they're like, "Dad, it's disgusting to play with this kid," or, "It's horrible, like, I hate that
Yeah.
attitude," or whatever. And then it sucks. It's hard to then, change that image of yourself in your with your friends in your community aren't if you don't have humility like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
And
I think it goes a
I
long
do
way.
wanna I know this is gonna sound judgy, but it's definitely it's my belief based on what I've seen over 20 plus years that entitled, snotty attitude is absolutely a response to parenting.
To parenting, I know.
I mean, that's exactly where it's developed, and that's exactly where it's not been corrected.
Mhm.
And so you might have a kid that's you think they're strong-willed or whatever, and yes, there's a spectrum of like not everyone's the same, and some kids are extreme in this way and not in others. But for the most part, if you have a smart ass kid, that's your responsibility. You've allowed it, whether you knew it or not, and it's your chance and opportunity to steer that in a different direction. You might have some work to do depending on how old they are and how pronounced those behaviors are. But that's not just a kid thing, that's a parenting thing. And so I know that's
Right.
going to hit home from some people. You're going to feel judged by that, but it's absolutely the truth. And it's actually empowering and should be good news that you have a role as a parent to address it. You've allowed it or
Mhm.
you've developed it. It's not, just something that's in the air or that's not just to that kid. There's some things that you've done or haven't done most of the time that you can still address. And modeling humility in addressing their attitude, their pride is the goal. Like go in and hold them accountable, but with humility. You want to model the thing that you want while you're teaching whatever else.
Mhm.
So they have a shitty attitude, they're being a punk. Don't be a punk at them. Like that's counter to what you really want. You want to go in with kindness and humility and still hold them accountable, which is a hard combination for a lot of people, but it's the best ratio of in your head thinking so and so needs to stop talking like this.
Yeah.
But if I go in and talk like they are to them, that's not going to work very well. It's going to look hypocritical. But if I can go in and say, uh, I care about you, and I care about you so much that we've got to talk about how you're coming across and how you're treating people. I was told the other day by some parents how you were behaving and
Like an
how you
a-hole.
made their kids feel
Yeah.
on the golf course. And that's not okay. Like
Yeah.
we need to be better than that. You can be better than that. And we need to start talking in more details about how you're reacting to adversity and challenges because to respond the way you did is not acceptable and we can't allow that because you're too good of a person, you have too big of a future for it to be tainted and pulled down with that kind of attitude, you know. You don't need to talk that much, but you feel the positivity and the accountability. They're packaged together. And we can also add humility to say, I know what it's like to freak out and have a tough day or have like a little, moment in my own life. And I am a better person when someone holds me to a higher standard and admit that I'm wrong and I can be better how I handle adversity. I want to be someone that can handle difficult things well, and I want that for you. And we should be able to work on that as we go through that together. You're inviting them into this like space to do life together versus just poking, just shining a bright light on their weakness or their poor behavior which is likely to make them get defensive and then they get all these excuses and now it's an argument that no one really wins. Instead of going that route, normalize it and cast a vision of how you see them, how they could be, and then invite them into like some active part of change of like as a family, I feel like we should start practicing. I think we can do a better job of when one of us is being prideful or egotistical, maybe we have a new word, a catchphrase that we can say that's very neutral. It's not provoking or accusatory, and that it hopefully resets the mood that we can maybe try again or start over, which is something I call it a safe word, but it's not necessarily safety that's the goal, but people know what that means.
Mhm.
And then the family gets this word that everyone kind of finds funny, like it's marshmallow or it's Barney or whatever. And someone can say it, and then it's like this really safe wake up call, like, hey, you're being a shithead, but let's not get mad at you. This is our chance to self correct and
Mhm.
get back on the right road. That's kind of like a skill set of breeding and growing a humble spirit or humility in general, is to give those checkpoints of like, how do we address it when someone looks like they're out of the lane, without it becoming a fight. And most parents react at the same energy level that the kid's at.
Mhm.
And you think about it logically, like that's not going to work very well. Aren't you wanting to like calm them down and pull them back over? Be that with your energy, be that with your attitude and your spirit, and still require something of them, or still have that same commitment to attitude. Like, you need to go apologize to so and so. It's the right thing to do, because that's not appropriate. They didn't do anything wrong. Your response to your adversity didn't justify you taking out on other people. In the same way, if I did that to you, I would need to come apologize to you, just
Mhm.
like I did the other day. I treated you unfairly for my issue that wasn't yours. I came to you. I said I was wrong. I need to do a better job of that, and I apologized. So the humility in how we address it, our own lives with our kids, is a very powerful teaching tool.
Yeah. And again, I think it always comes back to modeling, right? So if I'm out playing golf with the kids, I shank one in the water, I get mad, I throw my club,
Mm.
then I say marshmallow, and then we're gonna get we're gonna get humble, guys.
Oh,
Dad was wrong. I shouldn't be breaking or throwing clubs. And can I ask for forgiveness?
yeah.
Yeah. And so that's my segue
I
into
love it.
forgiveness, right?
Let's do it.
Uh so you said that you had some 5 tips
Forgiveness.
for forgiveness?
Yeah. So, because very few people really know how to forgive,
Yeah.
and constantly are asking, I don't know if I did. I don't know if I'm ready. What is it? Before we get into the steps, like what it is not, is you're not, by forgiving someone, you're not committing to trusting them. Trust is dependent on their behavior, their track record, what steps they've taken to rectify or remedy the situation. And there are people and situations that you want to be forgiving of that don't deserve or doesn't warrant trust.
Mhm.
It depends. So there's a separate. So we want to divorce the concept of trust and forgiveness. There are people that you're going to trust after you forgive them. There are people that you're not going to trust after you forgive them, because they haven't made any of the changes on their end to be trustworthy.
Mhm.
So trust is dependent on, are they trustworthy? Is there evidence that they're safe and reliable, or whatever you're looking for? Forgiveness is internal. That's what we are holding on to and then we're choosing to release.
Mhm.
So it's not contingent upon whether this person is trustworthy. It doesn't require a relationship. You could forgive them and never talk to them again.
Right.
So some people get hung up on forgiveness because they feel like they have to say everything that happened was okay, and now I have to go back to the way it was. It's like, no, absolutely not. Of course it wasn't okay. That's the whole reason you're forgiving them. It
Right.
was hurtful. But that doesn't mean you're saying it's okay. It doesn't mean you can't move past that. And you might not ever have a relationship with them because they might not be a safe enough, healthy enough person to be around. But forgiveness is releasing it from the inside for our sake,
I love
not
that.
not really for that person.
That yeah, it's not necessarily means you trust. And then it sounds like to me, if I'm reading through the tea leaves here correctly, that forgiveness is taking care of old numero uno. Am I right, Joshua?
Oh
Hmm?
God, it's like your gravitational pull back to yours.
how
Yeah,
can how
it
can
is.
Dan take care of Dan?
Yeah,
That's pretty much what this
just
is
so
what this
come
is
back to
really
Libby and
come
say,
back to.
"Hey,
Hey.
I'm just doing what we were talking
Okay,
about."
but
You're right.
I do want to give a shout out to my father-in-law, Larry. Some people call him Larry Legend.
Oh,
Shout out Larry. But one of his biggest mottos, or just kind of sayings that he's always imparted on me, was just forgive everybody, everything.
yeah,
And it truly is like, I just think when you said that, that it's for you. It's not, because it's not a two-way street. Maybe they don't care about forgiveness, or they don't care
right.
about being forgiven or whatever. Um, but I'm just, what a better world we could live in if everybody could forgive. everybody, everything,
Yeah, it's amazing.
just to take that burden off themselves, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
If there was, this is an original thought on mine. I haven't put much thought into this before. But if there was one thing a human could do, besides mindfulness, but I feel like if you're mindful, you're forgiving all the time. If there was one kind of skill set that I would say, what's the best for like a human to have the best life? Constantly forgive,
Mhm.
because you're not holding on to anything, and therefore you're not resisting, you're not guarded, you're not predicting, you're just experiencing and open all the time, versus the resistance. And the resistance leads to calculating. The calculating leads to energy and being tense and stressed and calculating and then projecting. All that stuff comes from someone who's preoccupied with holding on to versus releasing.
Mhm.
You're not saying what happened was okay. You're saying, I don't want to hold on to it. That's all forgiveness is. This is not a decision in the court of justice. This is, do you want to hold on to this or not? That's all. Like, why do you want to hold on to the thing that makes you feel shitty?
Mhm.
That makes no sense. It's not changing that person's behavior. You're taking it with you wherever you go,
Right.
right? Like one of the sayings is forgiveness is like trying to hurt the other person, but drinking, the poison yourself. You're trying to poison them, but you end up, just drinking it. And you're like, you're just hurting yourself. Like you're
Right.
not. And you are hurting everyone around you, which is unfortunate, like unintended people. Everyone suffers when we are resentful and bitter because we're not offering our best selves. We're distracted. We're harboring and holding on to some toxic energy that affects us everywhere. Like, and this goes to everyone that's listening. Like, if you're harboring resentment or bitterness to anyone or anything in your life, you're you're compromising all of your relationships. You're showing up less than you're capable of, because some of your energy is being used to like hold on to this thing that you haven't let go of. So if there was one thing that someone could do to better their life in the world, would be like Larry Legend. Is it Legend Larry or Larry Legend?
Larry Legend, yeah.
Larry Legend says, forgive everyone for everything.
Yeah.
You're not harboring. Now, so how do you forgive? So the why, it's
Mhm.
weak. It says it's okay what happened. It means I have to have a relationship with him. Those are all not true.
Mhm.
It always depends. Like, well, it depends on who the person is and what's happened. If they just killed your pet, and they're not changing their behavior, like, well, I need to forgive you because I'm angry, but I don't trust you ever again. I don't want you in my house.
Right.
We're never going to have a relationship again. Right. Um, versus something minor, right? They I don't know, they took your Tupperware, never returned it, and didn't feel that bad about it. And you're like, oh, well, whatever. That doesn't mean they're an untrustworthy person.
Mhm.
I need to forgive that and let go of that. That's silly, or a comment that they made while you guys were hanging out or something. Uh, the forgiveness steps, though, that I take clients through, are as follows. So we've already identified the issue. So and so did this thing. Okay. The first step is, what feelings have you had past and present in regards to this event or this interaction? And the reason we do this is because the energy is essentially stored in kind of like a feelings way, right? It's attached to our bodies in some way we've yet to figure out, but it's in there. And it's kind of like attached, like the hooks of how it's attached to us are like kind of in feelings hooks. So made me feel belittled or insecure or mad or sad or inferior or unwanted or devalued. Um, and I don't like those feelings. And so I'm resisting experiencing them, which then closes the doors, which then prevents that from flowing out of me. Right. So on this concept of like, we receive it. We didn't want it, but we received it. Now it's in us. Now it's us. It's up to us to release it.
Mhm.
And if we can't release it, it stays in us and we start to lock up. Ironically, keeping it in us, locking it inside of us, and we carry it, versus releasing it so that we can move forward and be available for the next thing in life and not be distracted. So identifying the feelings gets us in touch with what we're actually going and grabbing and releasing. The next step is to ask some. I call this our takeaways, but really it's like, what are your beliefs and the vows that you've made as a result of this thing that's happened. So, um, a generic wound. A parent says, um, you've disappointed me with your life choice here. And the feelings are, well, sadness and disappointment and, insecurity. Takeaways are likely to be, I'm not enough. My parent, doesn't think I'm good enough. I have to go prove it to them. I'll never be enough. Or it could be, this would be healthy and maybe accurate, but most people don't conclude this. But my parent's an idiot. They don't know what they're talking about. That could also be a belief. But to learn how this has impacted our thinking and our identity is a really educational part of forgiveness, to see how holding on to this has influenced our concept of self in the world. All people will hurt me. If my parent can hurt me, anyone can hurt me. Therefore, I need to be guarded. We do all kinds of subconscious, unconscious kind of calculations in response to deep hurt that just kind of like jack up our system, right? Like it's like pouring a soda on a computer or a keyboard. And it's like, well, it's just going to mess it up. There might be some keys that work and then there'll be some not, and they'll do some weird stuff. That's what happens when we hold on to hurt. It starts to like really jack up our identity and our concept of others in the world. And that's alleviated and solved for when we forgive quickly.
Mhm.
Now, not in the moment, maybe it might, depending on the offense. There's a timeline that's like commensurate to the offense. So someone cuts you off in traffic and you feel disrespected and then you get mad. Well, it's not personal. They're just inconsiderate or they're a bad driver. Forgiving them like within like a few minutes is appropriate. But if someone, um, let's say it's the same driver, they stop in front of you, make you stop, kidnap your kid, and take them for 3 months, right? Serious event. Like you might not forgive that person for a few years. Now,
Mhm.
you'd be better off forgiving him in a few days, but it's such a big event that it might take some time to work through. The longer that stuff is inside of us, the worse the damage is.
Right.
And so there is a goal of getting it out as quickly as possible and it still be authentic and real. To just say I forgive them today when you're furious on the inside won't work. The timing needs to be accurate, but most people hold on much longer than they should. So, feelings,
Mhm.
takeaways. Now, when I
Takeaways.
go through this with clients, sometimes we spend like multiple sessions or a whole session on takeaways
Mhm.
because it's so powerful about what people are believing about themselves and the world. Um, I facilitate that obviously, and so for someone to facilitate for that for themselves is, I think, harder, but it's still a good practice. Like, what have I believed as a result of this? What do I believe about myself from this event? Can I confirm or verify that that's true? Has anyone else said that to me? Does that happen in any other relationship, or has that been just because so and so said or did that? Usually it's isolated, it's not a theme in their life. Because a parent said that doesn't mean that's really their worth in the world.
Mhm.
But the quicker we can highlight that, the less impacted and less affected we are by that original hurt. Third step is out loud in authentic words. We say, I forgive so and so for fill in the blank. And there's a lot of power in saying it out loud. We want this outside of us. It's been inside of us, taking up space, infecting, in some cases, like literally like infecting our organs and our body in ways that we haven't really understood, but we will someday. It's certainly affecting how we think and our identity and how we interact with people. So to say, I want to speak this out and get it out, it is accomplished by saying out loud, I forgive so and so. It takes a lot of humility and courage and very vulnerable to say that. But if we want to be fully available for life, we're we're very vulnerable. We're very open. We're not guarded and resistant to it because we've already agreed experiencing it and releasing it is the healthiest formula. Opening our doors and letting something out is very vulnerable. And that's why a lot of people don't forgive is they're very uncomfortable and they're convinced they're going to get hurt again if they open those doors. But to say it out loud is powerful and that's got a lot of healing to it. It's not over right then and there. Their whole human experience will take some different turns in the days and weeks and years to follow, but it's a significant symbolic first step of saying I'm choosing to let go of this and I'm speaking it into truth
Mhm.
and I'm opening up and letting it out. Fourth step is identifying the triggers that they have in their life that remind them of this pain and this wound. So seeing that person, hearing that song, seeing that house, smelling that thing, that reminds me of that time so and so did this, or that reminds me of that time I suffered this. It's helpful to be proactive in identifying all the different triggers that stir up that memory to feel equipped and prepared versus caught off guard. And then the last step is we game plan our response to each of those triggers. So when I see so and so, I'm going to say to myself, I've I've forgiven them and I am no longer affected by how they think of me. Or when I drive by that place, I'm going to repurpose that place to say that place has caused pain in my life, but now it's brought learning and growth. It's a reframe or it's a repackaging or it's a mantra that we feel like we have in our back pocket when we're unexpectedly triggered.
Mhm.
We're not just a victim being caught in that same cycle again. We actually have a plan. I don't expect like parents to necessarily teach their kids, depending on their age, these 5 steps. I'm not saying don't. It's a little heady. It's a little um, time consuming, and they're young kids aren't going to want to like go through 5 steps.
Mhm.
But to abbreviate this and adjust it to their age would be an amazing gift for their kids.
Yeah,
And
for
likely,
anybody.
likely everyone that's listening is probably holding on to something
Yeah.
that they'd be better off releasing. And doing this for themselves is a gift for their children, is a gift for their partner and their friends and everyone they're around because they're harboring less resentment and bitterness, maybe none. And they're
Mhm.
more available for life, which is nice to be around. And then to teach their kids what it really looks like and feels like to forgive is an incredible gift.
Yeah.
Now, what's confusing is when someone has done this and then they're still triggered and then they still have the feelings. This doesn't mean we forget it, and it doesn't mean we won't have feeling reactions to that painful thing. It's a ongoing commitment of remaining open, like an open posture of when I am reminded again of that, I'm committed to that releasing over and over again, no matter how many times I have to do that. Thankfully, it doesn't take a long time for it to actually shift significantly once we open up and forgive.
Mhm.
It's not 1,000 more times before it's like neutral. It's for most people only a few more times because there seems to be a lot of like built in resiliency in our emotional selves to recover quickly once we actually take the right steps. It's just most people don't take the right steps, so they can't heal. They let the bitterness is still inside. So of course you're going to keep reacting with a lot of negativity. But if I say I am committed to having an open posture regarding so and so, and I'm going to continually let that stuff roll out of me, it does. Like I don't know how. I with clients I usually say I give an analogy of we have a bunch of minions inside of us that they're constantly taking our direction and our orders.
Mhm.
And I'm telling the minions, we are taking an open posture and we're releasing. Every time we have a memory of that person and that thing, let that go. And they will follow those orders. But if I say, we hate that person, I hate that person, and I'm going to do everything I can to like stay away from them, the minions clench fists, take a soldier posture, and then there's our energy.
Mhm.
Like we're constantly sending messages, whether it's at the cellular level, and I call them minions, or it's something yet to be discovered by scientists. It's constantly responding at a physical level, and there's a ton of power in saying we're open and we're releasing. And people feel it. We know what it feels like to be with someone who's open and available versus closed and guarded and accusatory. And we want for our children to be open to life. They're going to be hurt by us and others. Teaching them how to forgive is perhaps the best skill they can ever have, because you can't predict or guarantee that they won't be hurt. In fact, you'd say you can guarantee they're going to be hurt.
Mhm.
Giving them a recovery skill set is the best thing you can do.
I feel like there's such a correlation here with mindfulness, like just about everything we talk about. We always think there's such a thread of mindfulness, but to me, it sounds like what you're saying is that forgiveness is sort of that if you're looking at that in that mindfulness sort of way of, I always like to use that analogy of these thoughts come by and they're floating down a river, right? And they just, they drop in the water. You see them just let them pass down the river, right?
Yeah.
There they go. But, and it's like if you're not forgiving, then that rock is just stuck there, like it's on the shore, like you can't, it's
Yeah.
just still in your view. And it's like by the ability of saying out loud and forgiving it, you're kind of like pushing it back in the river and watching it just sort of go down the stream just with all the other rocks, right?
Yes.
And so to me, it just sounds really
Right.
empowering from that mindfulness perspective of that forgiveness is sort of the ability to just what it is, like let go, right? Just kind of let go of it and get
Yeah.
it out of
Yeah.
your thoughts, your
Not
system,
identify with
right,
it.
right.
It's not the absence of the thought that's the goal. It's the not identifying and attaching to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the damage is done. The thought itself is just a thought until we attach, like, oh, that means this. That means I am, they are. That identification with the thought is the threat. Just to notice the thought is just like noticing something else. Now, it has an emotional charge to it, depending on what it is and how recent it was. But if we were committed to being healthy and we're committed to being healthy parents, we are practicing mindfulness, and that looks like and feels like an awareness of thoughts and an ability to detach when we are attached to it and come back to the present moment, that for most people isn't a problem. They're sitting, they're driving, they're watching, they're eating, they're pooping, they're working. There's no problem. The problems they're experiencing are the thoughts they've attached themselves to that are somewhere out there, in ranging from real to unreal, usually slanted towards unreal.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're suffering all the play out consequences of that. Our children are going to do that unless we teach them differently, guaranteed, because that's what the world tends to teach. And that's what the mind does without instruction and guardrails. And forgiveness is an extension of that. And humility is too, to say, I don't want this negative energy, whether it's my pride and my ego is triggered inside of me, or I'm hurt by this person and I'm holding on to that and then suffering the ideas that come from that. All of that's toxic. It's like poison. And then no wonder we have symptoms, whether that's irritability or insecurity or depression or anxiety or physical symptoms. Like you're holding on to poisonous thoughts and ideas. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Release it and forgive. And now people know how. Like, well, follow these steps. This is what forgiveness looks like. And then the ongoing is an open posture of, no matter how many times you think of this thing, don't identify with it. Use your mantra, use your reframe, and tell the minions, we're going to forever release these things when they pop up so that they don't pull us down. It's an extension of mindfulness, or it's, in the same lane, is being aware of, like, hold on, wait, why are you doing that thing again? I, you're mad again at so and so? You've forgiven them. Yeah, but God, just well, a better you commits to releasing. It's time to release. Like, this is not worth it. Today is a gift you don't even know if you're going to have tomorrow. Let's not ruin and taint today by replaying the events of yesterday. It makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the best gift you can give yourself, and it's the best gift you can give your children. And the world is a better place when we are living out humility and we are actively forgiving.
Yeah. Well, and this takes me back to I think maybe one of our first episodes, and we were talking about what do we really want for our kids. And I think I instantly went to obviously want them to be D1 athletes and or, super cool, popular, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Uh
All the real important
yeah,
things.
all those important things. But no, but what I came away from, and I changed it since, that was all joking, by the way, pretty good parents. But what I think I came away with was I really want them to be able to self-regulate
Yeah.
in life. I'm like, just what a great superpower that would be if they could
Yes.
self-regulate their entire
Absolutely.
life. And this to me, Larry Legend, you forgive everybody, everything. Just having that skill to forgive, to me, that really is self-regulation, right?
Yeah.
And then having these five. So maybe we do a quick breakdown. Keep me honest, Josh.
Okay.
So we just talked about humility and forgiveness, right? And the importance of how if this isn't modeled, your kids are never going to get it right. And so with
Well, I
respect
say maybe not. Who knows if they're going to get it right?
right,
Like they
right.
could, but you also have no assurance of which direction it's going to go if you're not teaching it.
Yeah. And then talking about humility, that's more of an attitude and a character trait, right?
Yeah.
Where forgiveness is truly a skill that can be learned. You had 5 great steps on how to do this. So one was identify what feelings, your past and present.
Yeah.
2, it's all about the takeaways, right?
Yeah.
So
What have you
wha-
believed as a result of that?
yeah,
Right or wrong?
yeah, and then does that play into their identity,
Yeah.
right? And 3 is being super authentic and out loud saying, I forgive so and so for XYZ,
Yeah.
right? And then 4 is identify the triggers, right? So where those are, like you said, people, places, things, songs,
Smells. Yeah.
smells, all stuff. And then 5, that game plan of response to those triggers. And often, probably that being just say, I forgive. Those triggers come up. I forgive that person. Oh, yeah. I don't need to carry it. Hold on to that. I forgive them, right?
Yeah.
To be free. So
You got it.
that's awesome, Josh. I feel like I just learned a whole lot.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Maybe you're able to
That's
forgive
great.
me now for all the
Yeah.
violations of our friendship.
All those violations. Well, pretty good parents. Hope you learned something too. If you did learn something and find that valuable, maybe you're hoping somebody will forgive you. Share the episode. So here you go. Just a subtle.
Totally.
Here you go.
Not so subtle.
There you go.
If you want restoration in our relationship, listen to this.
Yeah, or we're done.
I mean, I thought about this the other day in our share buttons, making a funny remark saying like, I'm, not judging you by sharing this with you, because it can really feel
I've
like,
actually thought about that as well. And then I've always seen those, there's those memes or whatever, and it's like, share this with, like the worst golfer or like the person that does this, right? It's like, it's basically saying that.
please share, and don't worry about how people are going to take it. That's their deal.
It's
If
a-
it's
oh,
helpful
no.
and it's wise, share it.
Yeah. So
We all
cool.
could be better off if we knew how to forgive.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to work on being more humble today and being filled with forgiveness and forgive everybody, everything. So
I love it. That's a great goal for the day.
Awesome. Well, have a great week. Pretty good parents. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. Go make a difference.
I'm a pretty good parent. Yep.